Silent Echo. By Nameless Saint. On the edge of a small, rural town, a dilapidated house sat atop a hill surrounded by sprawling fields. The teenager who lived there, Danny, had grown up with a hard edge, shaped by years of struggle and isolation. The property, inherited from his grandfather, had become a symbol of his family's decline, and Danny's interactions with it were often filled with anger and frustration. One morning, as the sun barely peeked over the horizon, Danny noticed an old man at the edge of the property's neglected pond. The man, with a weathered face and an air of serenity, was fishing with a rod that looked as old as he was. Danny's initial reaction was one of irritation. He stormed out of the house, his boots kicking up dust as he approached the pond. "You're trespassing!" Danny yelled, his voice echoing across the open field. "Get off my land!" The old man didn't respond. Instead, he continued to cast his line with a calm and deliberate motion, his movements smooth and practiced. Danny fumed, ready to escalate the confrontation, but something about the old man's silence made him hesitate. Danny watched, frustrated but curious, as the old man patiently fished. Time seemed to slow down. The old man's quietude spoke volumes, and Danny found himself drawn to the scene despite his anger. He noticed how the old man's fishing line danced lightly on the water's surface, how he seemed completely absorbed in the process, and how a sense of peace enveloped him. As the sun climbed higher, Danny remained by the pond, his initial hostility fading into contemplation. The old man's presence, unshaken by Danny's outburst, began to shift something within him. He began to think about the pond, the fields, and the house, how they had once been vibrant and full of life. Gradually, Danny's anger turned into reflection. He remembered stories his grandfather had told him about the pond, about how it had once been a place of joy and connection. Danny's resentment had clouded those memories. He realized that in his bitterness, he had forgotten the beauty and history of the place he had inherited. Without saying a word, the old man's patience and silent contentment revealed to Danny a different perspective. He understood that while the land might be struggling, it still held potential and beauty. As the day wore on, Danny walked back to the house with a renewed sense of purpose. The old man eventually left, leaving behind only the gentle ripple of his fishing line in the pond. Danny knew he needed to restore the land, to honor the legacy of his grandfather and to reclaim the peace that had been lost. From that day forward, Danny poured his energy into the property. He cleared the overgrown fields, repaired the old house, and worked to bring life back to the pond. In the process, he found solace and a deeper connection to his roots. And though he never saw the old man again, Danny often thought of him and the silent lesson he had imparted. The old man had changed Danny's heart, not through words, but through his quiet presence and the unspoken wisdom of a life well lived.